The ESPN NHL way too early power rankings came out, and I thought this was an interesting kind of spot check, vibe check, if you will, for the Carolina Hurricanes. And then it was pretty much exactly where I thought they would have been like at the end of last season. Like nothing has changed this offseason. The Canes are sixth best team according to ESPN's NHL way too early power rankings. They're so respected that I don't think there's any possibility of them ever flying under the radar, which is what I was hoping would happen, by the way. I think this team would benefit a little bit from being the hunter rather than the hunted for just like one season here as they kind of look to reset things a bit. Instead, they're the sixth best team according to ESPN right now. Post-draft, post-free agency, sixth best team. Let me be the first to say it if I'm actually probably it's been said before, but let me be amongst those who say it. That's too high. This offseason, for the immediate future, like next season's future of the Carolina Hurricanes, this offseason has not been a good one for them. Now, that's not to say it's been a bad offseason because you do have to judge things from a front office perspective, equally weighing the now and the future, right? The reason why they didn't break the bank to bring back Jake Gensel isn't because, moving on from Jake Gensel is good for next year. It's because they didn't want to hamstring themselves in the future, right? You have to weigh both. Some decisions you make for the betterment of the future, some decisions you make for the betterment of the now. The decisions they've made have overwhelmingly been to protect the future. Like, name one position they are going to be better at this year than last year. There really isn't one. So it's really, really hard for me to say the Canes will be better next year than they were this year, or even as good next year as they were this year. I guess, Svetch being healthy for an entire year, if you had that magic pixie dust to spread over him and guarantee health, that would be a way.
He's actually going to train for the season, not rehab like he did last year.
But, right, a healthier Svetch, does that make up for not having Gensel, who you had at the end of last year? That's a bigger delta, right? That's a bigger gap. Sometimes I think it's good to appropriately have expectations lower. Allow yourself to develop. How many times are we going to talk about the ways that they might be able to solve the issues they have on their roster? Yesterday, we spoke ad nauseum. We spoke with a couple of the guys that are combined to have like 2 games of NHL experience that might be able to solve one of the problems on the big league club. That's potential. But, potential, there's sayings about potential, right? Potential without production. It used to say, and $3 will get you a cup of coffee, but it's probably now like $8.75. I don't drink coffee, so it seems like it's getting more and more expensive by the day. You look at this team, if you put them 12th, I think it might take a little bit of the pressure off. It might let some of those people that are playing a little tight. I think it's important to be appropriate with your expectations. And if you bring up the NHL way too early top 25, the teams also tell the story, right? I said top 25 like it's college sports. The NHL way too early power rankings. Carolina's over Boston. They're over Nashville, who had the splashy offseason. They had Vancouver, Toronto, New Jersey, I almost said Golden State, Vegas.
Them too.
Warriors. I don't know. Just throwing
they lost Klay Thompson. I don't know how they recovered from that.
Steph Curry.
Depth scoring. Need it.
I think it's important that we look around and recognize what the Carolina Hurricanes prioritized this offseason. They did not make any kind of all-in move. We've seen teams make all-in moves. This has been more of it is a bummer to do, but in the interest of this program moving into the future, we have to make these tough decisions. That's the theme of the offseason. Proms have themes. It's like Paris at night and like Great Gatsby, right? Like the theme of this offseason, if it were a prom, would be tough decisions, right? It would be not inappropriate. It would be unenjoyable. Brett Pesci, Brady Shea, you moved on from them not because moving on from them makes you a better team. You moved on from them because in the best interest of the future of the franchise, you couldn't reconcile their price.
They couldn't afford them.
Couldn't afford them is not but it's completely justified reason to move on from a player. They're too expensive is a completely justified reason to move on from a player. It's not one that makes you better next year. The players you brought in, whether it's Roslovic, whether it's Walker, whether it's Carrier, sure, I'm sure they're players you liked when you watched them on film, but part of the reason they appealed to you is they were cheap. They were cheap. Why were you able to bring back Chatfield and Martinook and not Pesci and Shea? Well, because they were $3 million. You were able to keep the cheap ones. This offseason was about being not hamstrung in 2026, right? It was about not having anchor contracts in 2027. It wasn't necessarily about doing everything you can to get better next year. And most teams that are in the top 5, 6, 7 of a professional sports franchise, of a professional sports league, are all in to win. There's going to be 7, 8 teams every year that sniff the cup and go for it. Go for it. The Carolina Hurricanes are not. It actually feels, and I said this in the office the other day, it feels like they're preparing for like a future offseason, right? You see this more in the NBA because you start timing it up, right? It's like, in like 2014, you start going, in 2016, KD, Steph, and LeBron are all going to be free agents, so let's make sure all of our money comes off the books right then. The Canes are going to have money to spend next offseason.
And a lot of it, too.
It would be a little dumb if you're looking at an offseason where you're going to be able to be a top spender and make all the moves and be splashy, to then go spend all of that money right now going all in for this year when you're like, right, have a little bit of patience. It's like, I'll use me as an example.
Okay.
My birthday is early January, okay?
All right.
My Christmas for everyone is end of December.
Okay.
Usually, you get a couple, envelopes, a little bit of cash from family members or whatever on Christmas.
Sure.
Most kids take their Christmas money. What are they? They run into Toys R Us or Dick's Sporting Goods or wherever they're going, or Academy Sports, and they're going to go grab all of the toys, right? I was always like, you know what? If I wait like 2.5 weeks, I could get something way cooler because I'm going to get a little bit more cash for my birthday, right? And it was dumb to go spend before the new year on a scooter when I could get a motor scooter, a couple, whatever it is.
Now we're talking.
Like that's what that's what the Canes are doing right now. They're going, we could spend and have fun. We could spend and have a better next year. Or we could wait, pool it together with all this other money we're going to get next offseason, and then we can go get, the true top end, which is, again, completely okay, justified way to build the team. It's not an okay, justified reason to make them the 6th best team right now going into next season.
I think it's also a compliment to, how they play, their consistency with their roster, and they do have some great top-end players.
Yes, but they had all those players last year.
True, and that's the reason why I think they were like number 1 or number 2 last year going in.
Well, they were the 3rd best record, and they were eliminated in the 2nd round of the playoffs.
Yeah.
So the difference.
My team with the best record.
True, but they're so let's say they were 3rd.
Okay.
3 spots: Jake Gensel, Brett Pesci, Brady Shea, Steph Nason, Teuvo Teravainen. All of these guys are worth 3 spots.
Apparently,
I don't think it was enough. And by the way, I would love it's now if they're the 8th best team in the league next year, feels like they underperformed. I think 8th best would be a good season for him next year.
Sure, yeah, you're still top 10 team in the league.
You're still a playoff team. You're still all these things. I think if you set expectations appropriately, then 8th would be like, heck yeah, look at this. Even in a kind of reset year, I wouldn't call it a rebuild. I'd call it a little bit of a retooling. Even in a retooling year, we're still 8th.
Do you think Carolina, knowing this year, like, okay, we still have some guys we got to sign. We still got to get Jarvis long-term. Still got to figure out Natchez and these kinds of things. Knowing that you have buku of money coming off the books next year. I think I remember correctly, it's like somewhere like $25-ish million. I
mean, we could tally them up pretty quickly.
I mean, you
get to the Orlovs and all that. Those are big money contracts.
But no on-air math for you. But
appreciate
nonetheless,
that. Thank you.
But
saving me from myself.
Like some of the guys are going to be leaving possibly after this season. Brent Burns, Dmitry Orlov, Evgeny Kuznetsov. You can fill those positions with your young guys on cheap contracts, and you have a bunch of money you could splurge for like a 3-year window.
We're going to keep talking about this later on in the show, but Rod Brind'amour today hinted a lot about young guys getting opportunities.
Oh, yeah.
Eric Tolsky has talked about maybe keeping room for young guys to get opportunities. The year where you're going for the cup, you're usually not like, yeah, let's let them cut their teeth out there.
Yeah.
Let's go, give them some reps to, work out the growing pains. You do that the year before you go for the cup. So then they have all those first jitters, all that growing pains out of the way. Next year, you just have guys on entry-level contracts that you trust because they worked it all out the year before, and then you do what you just said. You consolidate, go big, and you can trust the guys on the back end.
It's probably right, but you have Roslovic on a 1-year deal, Robinson on a 1-year deal, Tyson Jost on a 1-year deal. Yeah, exactly.
If by the second half of the season you want to replace some of their minutes with some of the younger guys, you don't feel as bad because you're like, they're out of here in 3 months anyway.
Yep.